Welcome to the latest edition of Here's What We Know, the podcast of unexpected conversations. I'm going to be honest, I've had some fascinating people on this show. I've had gold medal winning Olympic athletes. I've had million seller authors. I've had nationally, internationally known comedians and actors. And I mean, everybody. I don't think I've ever had a more impressive resume or CV, as I guess the current saying is, even though I don't know what CV means. Let me just hit some of the highlights. Started with a degree and graduated magna cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa from UC San Diego. Then got her master's from Cornell University, where she received a full ride scholarship and a stipend as a park leadership fellow and built the Big Red Incubator as a managing partner. Again, this sounds like I know what this means, and I don't. Then she got her law degree from George Mason University School of Law, is a licensed New York State attorney, and that's just the start. Then let's add some other names you might know. She was the head of global and partner marketing for Google's Google Play Music and the Google Play Store, the VP of marketing and content for Harman International Samsung. I'm having to read this because there's no way I would remember it and memorize this. VP of marketing and general manager at Playphone North America, senior business development at Time Warner AOL, former VP of strategic alliances at Audible Amazon, and currently serves as the CEO of Logic Mart. Her name is Chia-Lin Simmons, and I don't even know where you found time to talk to me today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for the invitation, Scott.
Well, it's absolutely amazing. This is such a wild journey. Have you always been that kid? Were you just like the easiest child in the world to deal with? Because where's she at? Oh, she's studying. She's writing a report. She's building a robot.
That is 100% not true. So for all of those students out there who was not the top of their class, I'm your inspiration because I was not the top of my class. I was not the valedictorian, salutatorian, or even in the top 5% of my class in high school. I don't actually even remember my SAT scores, but I'm pretty sure it's unimpressive because otherwise I would have remembered it. So there is hope for y'all there, guys. So as I'm telling you, Gary, I think that I'm the inspiration for the kids who are not like necessarily high school achievers and academic stars in high school. So
Well, I think your inspiration and also make me feel like a complete failure. So thanks for that. You and I are going to be really good friends. We are. I enjoyed it. It's just amazing when you went. So you go into college, and let's be you college worked real well for you. So when you went there, was it like this is my tribe, this is my place, I understand it? Have you always? Because here's my thing. I have a 14 and a 12-year-old. And I try to sit back and say there's certain things about the sciences and math. It's a language. It's if you can speak it, if you can understand the rhythms of it, it becomes exponentially easier. Your father does it. Was that you when you got into college? Did you understand the rhythms? Did you know what you wanted to major in from the moment you got there?
100% not. So I did get a scholarship to from Women's International to study business, but UC San Diego did not have a business degree, so they applied it to economics degree. I got to school, took a introduction statistics class I had. I want to say because it's a UC, 500 students. Sat down, was totally confused and dropped the class. And so I changed to my major after that to communications. And so I did not know what I wanted to do. I actually thought when I was in college, I wanted to go into publishing. Really believed that everybody, and again, this is back in the days of paperback sitting in places like, grocery stores and drugstores and everywhere, that I thought everybody deserves $795 worth of happiness, right? You get to read a book, you escape the world. And so how much better would it be than to do publishing? And mind you, I did not have the highfalutin ideas that I was going to find the next Hemingway. I was like, let's publish the popular sort of like, things that people love to read because everybody deserves happiness. That was my philosophy, right? And so obviously I am not in publishing. And so I again go back to the idea that college is a really great place. And it's okay that you're not the best student in high school. You will find your tribe, you'll find your place, whatever college you go to. Um, I think whatever you study doesn't mean that that's what you're going to do in life. And eventually people find the space that's really a an area, a place that they feel like they can contribute to. But I didn't start off with a journey that is a linear path by any means. And so hopefully people will take, I guess, some heart to that because it is possible to be somebody who enjoys your job and love what you do and make an okay amount of money doing it without knowing what you wanted to do when you were 14 or 15. We put a lot of pressures on kids to do that now. You need to know that you're a STEM major and you're going to make money. And you got to pick the right major so that you could come out with a really good ROI. That's just so unfair. And I can tell you that I certainly didn't have that in mind when I was going to school. So,
Ooh, that's good stuff. All that stuff you just said. Because here's my take. I majored in English literature and then spent the rest of my career playing country music. Right? And we've heard of so many of these. Matter of fact, you're the only communications major because I met a lot of them. I didn't major in communications because the college where I went to, the communications department hired me to do stuff on the radio station. And I'm like, but there's kids who are paying to be on there. And you're hiring me. You're the only communications major I've ever heard of with an eye toward publishing. I mean, you're it.
yeah.
Uh,
And
so you
to
were the weird kid in that way.
I was definitely the weird kid. I went to actually to the point where I went to the Harvard Radcliffe publishing course, where they literally try to produce, I think it was a class of like 100 kids, and they try to produce people who are going to be the next editors for magazines and books and book publishers. And so went there, and there was definitely quite a lot of kids whose dream was to find the next Hemingway, to be the editor for the next major, Pulitzer Prize winning book. I was that weird kid that was like, oh, I don't want to find the next, amazing author. Let's talk about the business side and like how much does one make and like what kind of books do we need to publish to make a lot of money for the book publishing industry. And at the time, as an undergrad, actually, UC San Diego was one of the hubs. So it wasn't quite by accident that I stumbled on working in the tech industry. UCSD was one of the hubs and the backbones for the internet. And so I had a lot of professors who were very encouraging and amazing people and who got me introduced to the internet. And I remember seeing the first Mosaic browser, which really dates me. So I'm just going to say that right now. I saw it in 1993 and I thought, I don't know what that is, but I would love to do something with that. And I remember telling I thought of his name was Erwin Applebaum, who is the publisher of Pocket Books back then, which is I
Oh,
think
yeah.
small size sort
Mhm.
of paperback publication. I remember saying to him during the Sherry Hour, as they called it, at the Harvard Radcliffe Publishing course, that your business is going away in 10 years. The internet's going to take over everything. Okay. Well, so I was a punk kid at 21 who didn't know what she was doing or saying. But certainly, it took several more decades for ebooks to become popular. And, but it is a transformative technology. And I remember looking at it in 93 thinking, I want to do whatever that is. And that is what I ended up doing. So,
See, now I think it's fascinating, right? Because you did. I worked for a long time in this broadcasting industry, and people go because it's not known for its longevity, and it's like, how have you lasted? And because I think like you, even though I'm not comparing myself to you, because you are impressive, but I understood that if I made somebody more money than I cost, I was always going to be good. They were always going to like say, you're valuable. And that's the thing that you worry about in college. And you said the ROI, finding a degree, and thinking of what am I doing that I can make money with? It's rarely an artistic endeavor, not to belittle anybody, but some of the worst. I just saw this study that came out this week. I think I talked about it yesterday. The worst paying majors, the top 10 are all engineering. And then the bottom 10 are literature, philosophy. It's the things you would expect. Russian literature, I mean, that may be a passion, but is it a good return on your investment? And I can only imagine how many people have asked you to speak at that. And when you speak to these young people, look at you and go, that, how do you handle letting them know the reality of the business world, any business?
you know, I think that we go to college, and this is very unpopular to say nowadays when there's such a pressure. And let's be candid here. I think at the time that I was going to college, you know, certainly tuition for the universities were much cheaper. Nowadays, I have a 16-year-old. I'm already bracing myself, but private universities between tuition and room and board and all of those things and books can cost upwards of $90,000. And so you're talking about close to $500,000 in investment. So no doubt that the parents are really thinking, look, whatever you choose to do, let's make sure you can pay back some of those loans. And there's a way to ensure that, this isn't going to be plaguing on you for the rest of your life. And that's very, very valid. I was very fortunate. I went to a public school at a time when my parents were able to help afford to pay for that. I certainly went to school with people who had to work study and had to take out loans. And I was one of the fortunate ones that had my parental support to do that. I always, still thank my parents for not having an undergraduate debt. Um, but I always think of it this way too. I come from a culture where, you know, we knew a couple of things. Like you're either going to be a doctor or you're going to be a lawyer. And God forbid if you weren't one of those. And I'm old enough that engineering was not one of those. Computer engineering is not one of those things they talked about. But maybe you'll do sort of vaguely this business thing vaguely,
Mhm.
right? And so, like a good Chinese kid, I went and I was a candy striper and I candy striped, and I think they made me carry these bags of blood, and I was completely grossed out, and that was almost an immediate that I was not gonna be a doctor, right? And so they had to transfer me somewhere, and so they put me into the gift store. And I think it was like 15 or something like that. I thought, "Oh, what a better place to be because I could help them make money here, and, like, people come here and, they're gonna get something that's gonna make people temporarily happy for a little bit, or they're in a bad situation, and so they're seeing people who are family members, and so maybe buying some balloons or a stuffed animal will help brighten this sort of situation." And so always I thought whatever you do, you wanna do something that, hopefully will make somebody's lives a little better. And, like, if you can make money alongside with it, that's a huge, huge, like, 100% benefit. And in an ideal world, you want those 2 things to collide, right? So you want to
And it's
enhance
possible.
people's lives, and you want those things to also make money, and those things, if they can collide, 100% better, right? And I think that could happen in almost every major. I mean, I think as a communications major, in publishing, people still read. Of all things, like we thought books were going to go away. Well, they haven't gone away. They've taken different forms of distribution and methodologies of consumption, but storytelling hasn't gone away. Books haven't gone away. And so it's just taken a different format. And how we monetize it has changed in many, many ways. But storytelling and fundamentally good storytelling hasn't gone away either. So we always need people who are creators in the world. And so the fact that we don't value creators today is problematic. And I would even postulate that once we get into the world where AI becomes quote a creator, it's going to run out of things to sort of make, right? Because
Mhm.
ultimately they're making things from things that came out of nowhere. And those things that came out of nowhere came out of the creative minds of people, and those things have to flourish somewhere. AI to this day, they will hallucinate, is what they call it. They create things. They will create things, they'll hallucinate or make new things that didn't exist before. That hallucination could be great, it could be negative, depending how you look at it. But creating new things is not as easy as one can imagine. And what computer science does and what AI does is learns. And so what is it learning from? It has to learn from something. And so that original creation still might have to reside somewhere. And I may be in the minority that thinks that way, but I certainly think that there is always a place for original thought and creativity and content creation, right?
Yeah, you would hope and get boy, because you got such a background in AI, we can go down that because it's just so fascinating. And I really wanna, I really do, because you don't get a chance to talk to somebody who's truly immersed in the field every time. We all have the stuff we can talk about with our buddies, and we can talk Terminator and Skynet. We can all do that. We can bring that up and talk about how bad the Terminator movies have got. But
I loved the original, it was great. So
the original was great, right? And then because you talked about creative ideas, right? You keep, and then you're like, hold it. What has that got to do with the original story? Where did we go? Oh, that is Star Wars. Don't get me started, Charlie. Oh, God, that's where we're talking about the creativity. And all of that stuff. But just to keep it on that one line before we go into that thing, as far as like when you're CEO and you're dealing as I've talked to a CEO before, and he goes, I don't get to have small problems. I've got people who handle small problems. I just do big problems. And I'm like, so it's all about hiring the right people stuff. But when you go out and recruit from these young people, and it is and I'm not telling you anything, but I'll give you my apocryphal thing from people I've known who high up. It's like it's very hard because we've turned into work-life balance to where it's like, well, we think if we work a minute, we get a minute off, and we do that, and it's like, no, when we're doing startups, when we're working, we're going to be working really hard and working really. Well, that's stressful, and I don't want that stress in my life. And again, this is not an old man railing at the kids to get off their lawn. I'm asking you because you are in it. I'm not in it. How do you how do you address that? How do you approach it?
Yeah, I think that, I think certainly as a Gen Xer, I think that the work environment that a Gen Xer, and certainly a boomer, all of us, we had a very different experience with a work life balance and also what we consider to be important in terms of work experiences. And so I think fundamentally, COVID has changed some of that, um, completely. But even before then, we were seeing seeds of the difference in terms of how that looks like. I'm a big believer in treating people as if they're adults. And yes, even some of the young people, even though they look like babies to me sometimes because I am old and they look so fresh and young and just, sometimes they look like 12 to me because I am that old. And so ultimately, I have to remember that I'm treating and working with a person on the other side that if I do my hiring right, I'm hiring an adult. And so, the way that we look at work in the future is radically different than how we should be looking at work in the past and utilizing that as a model. And so, for example, this company, even before I came on board, was fully remote. And so we have sort of held on to that. And even in my previous company, we were fully remote. And not because we didn't want to all gather together and work together. In fact, my VP of engineering, he and I worked together in an office. And I used to tell people, I'm like, I bummed off the guys like coffee making forever. I do not make coffee. We don't drink coffee in my home, but he makes amazing Colombian coffee that he grinds by hand and roasts by himself. So I would like skedaddle over in an office and like pretend like it was, like I was just trying to do something else. And then he would offer me a coffee like that he was making, right? So those types of environments, that was amazing. And I love bonding with my coworkers and we always laughed and, it was a great environment. But that time may have passed and that working relationship with people may have passed. And now, so when we actually looked at building a new company together, we thought, what we're looking for is potentially millennials and Gen Z and their concept of what it means to work and play. They work really hard and they play really hard. And so, does the geographic boundaries make a difference? And so to me, what I want to do is hire adults who can manage their adult sort of behavior. So that means I have to trust that they are going to deliver the work that they're going to get done. And if they don't, they're terminated from the company. But if they can get their work done, do I care if they're doing it like in another state? Do I care if they're doing it on a beach? Are they delivering what they need to deliver? The reality is I don't care so long as the work gets delivered, meetings are had, so that we can actually get things done together. And so that work experience is one that they're building together. Work culture is a live thing. It's not a static thing that we impose on other people. It's one that people build together. And so if you look at where things are going with Gen Z and the young millennials, they're looking to build a culture that's almost entirely virtual. And who could blame them because that is how they live their life,
Mhm.
right? They don't go out and, like, hit the malls the way we used to, like, that was the only way you hang out back then when, I was growing up, right? You come back when it gets dark. And so now they spend a bulk of, if not most of their sort of interactions with each other virtually. And their sort of life is lived in a somewhat quasi real, quasi, sort of virtual life. And so the work experience then is shifting because of that. And so we can't try to impose sort of our generational sort of differences and make them effective in that environment. I think we need to sort of examine and look at that and build a culture and allow them to work with us to build a culture that is a good one for everybody. So,
And everything is cyclical. And it'll all turn back around. I mean, would it shock you in 10 years that there's 98% percentage back in office? I mean, that's just the way business. I can see where there was always back and forth, and there's going to be nobody's going to think about, hey, I need to stay home today. And as you said before, I've got a situation at home. I've got a sick child. I've got a parent that needs to help. And that's part of what Logic Mark does. And
exactly.
we're going to get into that. See, my problem is I need 6 hours of your time, but we'll just figure out on episode 2. And we'll get back on that.
I'd be happy.
But it's a fascinating cyclical thing. And just to get back into the college experience, I try to sit back and tell this to my children. The most important thing I learned in college, I can't tell you one thing from one class. I can't. But I can tell you I was responsible for myself. I could tell you that I learned because I paid for my college, because I went to one of those cheap colleges, that I can go out on Thursday night because that was the big night out because everybody went home on the weekend. But I've got an 8 a.m. critical essay class Friday morning. And if I miss it, it's my money. So, and nobody's going to wake me up and nobody's going to wash my clothes and nobody's going to make me dinner. And I think that's the key. And then I also try to stress to my kids, I told my son, I said, my job, because you're still under my roof, my job is to protect the 36-year-old you from 14-year-old you. That's my job. At 18, it becomes your job to protect the 36-year-old you from the 18-year-old you. And you'll do that for the rest of your life. And that's what college taught me. It's how much beer one should not drink.
That too.
The,
That too. Some people never learn, though, I will say.
Well, you just graduate to good beer. It's not about the quantity. It truly becomes about the quality.
Well, I will say, as somebody whose car got hit by a drunk driver and that car was parked on the street, close on the curb, close to the curb, some people still haven't learned that. And they're
Uh,
older. So there you
oh,
go, right?
yeah.
There you
That's
go.
why. That's why those of us, because I'm older than you, that's why those of us who know better drink at home.
Exactly.
And we drink at home on a Friday or Saturday night. We have our 1 or 2 drinks, and that's what we do.
Exactly.
I'm fascinated by the next thing because I know you that. I know you went and worked at Wired Magazine, which was kind of weird because you got offered a job at Disney World and told them no. How? Really?
Yeah. So that literally, I think you almost parroted what my parents said. I actually had a job to go to Disney to work in publishing. And so I graduated out of this Harvard Radcliffe course. So happens a friend from that course turned down that job to do something different. I can't remember exactly what happened there too. I think I'm Facebook friends with her, so I'll have to ask her why she didn't take the job either. And so the job offer came, and I was still stuck with the idea that this internet thing is very cool and I wanted to do that. I came out of publishing and it seemed like a wonderful opportunity. And I will say that the Disney publishing opportunity, would have been would have been a really wonderful work experience. It was to license the characters for books, golden books, and also to, I believe, like home goods, right? So it would have been a wonderful learning opportunity for me. But I was mentally stuck on this idea that this internet thing, I want to do it. And so I turned down that job.
And you were right. Let's be
Well,
clear.
but let's just say that, I lost my first job after 6 months because I was at iGuide, MCI sort of partnership. And I was somebody who was responsible. I turned in my portion. And then all the people who got their stuff done and delivered their portion of the iGuide, we got fired. And we didn't find out until we read it on, I think it was New York Times or Wall Street Journal that day. And I just didn't happen to pick up a copy on the way to work. And then I got there and, I think it was like 80% of us got laid off in one day. And it was a shocker. And my parents are like, "Oh, okay. Well, you should look for another job." And I come from a family where, you know, not only do you so you spill over You cry over spilled milk for like 3 seconds and then you wipe it up and then you figure out how to get another glass of milk, right? Like there's not a lot of crying in between and wallowing. And so, I think I cried for like 30 minutes, packed my box of very minuscule little amounts of stuff, and then went back and said, I need to find a job. Right. And so went out and turns out that Disney job was still there. We're talking to them and and then another opportunity came to work at Wired, and my parents are like, "Are you still gonna do this? For the love of God, you just got fired 6 months ago."
Can you imagine your 16-year-old daughter doing this to you?
You know what? So 100%, I think that my parents had a lot of forbearance because my first year at work, I lost 2 jobs. I lost my job at iGuide. I lost my job at, Wired. I was there for about 6 months, and we were trying to go public, and we didn't go public, and last in, first out, right? And so got a great recommendation from my wonderful, fabulous boss, Mark Fellenfelder. I was in awe. He was a zine publisher. He was the coolest person one could ever imagine having as a boss. I got to do really cool stuff like host a chat room, and try to use Klingon and like well, it's like really random stuff, doing things that are just super experimental. Like I think we call them brain tennis. We were launching new products that like was like, you know, dialogue discussion things. It was some really cool experimental online publishing stuff that was just crazy. And I mean, I'm old enough to say that like I also managed like portions of the CompuServe like chat rooms, right? I'm like, dear God. So, they didn't even have, and for those kids out there, like they didn't even have names for your email address. It was like numbers. Like that tells
That
you how
CompuServe is what we used in the wagons as we was crossing the West. That's what we
exactly.
that's that.
That's how far back it goes, right? So second time I lose my job within a year. My parents just like, "You're freaking crazy." But they were like, "I don't know what you're thinking." And so I, but they were like, "Well, she's managed to find jobs within, 2 weeks to a month after she loses one. So I guess she'll sort of figure out someday." And so I ended up moving on to work for several companies, which I had longer tenures for, year and a half and 2. And then with every subsequent job, I try to take the philosophy that I wanted to take a job that I didn't know how to do. That it was scary, I didn't know how to do it, and
That's not the way this usually goes.
100%. I was always looking for opportunities within the industry where I was going to take on something I didn't know what to do. I've always had the good fortune of having managers who said, "Do you think you're smart?" "Yeah, I think so, relatively." "Do you know what you're doing?" "Nope." And so, but you feel like you could figure it out. "Yeah." And so that was, the early days of the internet. And I think, certainly with really good managers, they're looking for opportunities. They can see what you can do, and they're looking for opportunities for you to feel like you could stretch. And if you pick a really great person, they can stretch in ways and learn in ways that you cannot imagine. Right. And I've been very fortunate to have really good mentors and bosses that way. I mean, I cannot say enough good things about Don Katz at Audible. I remember sitting
Audible.
down with him and, he was like, "Do you know anything about mobile?" Now, this is the days of, only 35% of Americans have mobile phones.
Yeah, it was still a cool thing when
It was a
somebody
cool
pulled out a
thing.
phone. I mean, that was not something you saw every day. You saw somebody on the phone at Chick-fil-A, that was a big deal.
Yeah, and I had like like a Palm, PDA, and it was like really cool. But I did not have a smartphone. And he was just like, "Okay, do you think you're, relatively strong?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I could figure things out. Like, I don't know if I'm like the most genius person out there, but I think I'm relatively smart." It's like, "Okay." Next thing I knew, I was running the mobile business at Audible. And so
Can I ask how old you were at this time?
I was
You had to be young.
20 something.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, your track record, and I know you gloss over it because I mean it's just very impressive. But the thing it is Doc Katz would ask you, "Do you think you can figure it out?" Because he can look back over things and go, "Look what this person has done. That's what she does. She just figures things out." That's amazing, especially at that age.
I will say that I don't think I'm particularly unique. I mean, I think that, if you talk to, I think, was it this former founder of Slack, I think he said people who don't credit luck as part of their success are people that he doesn't want to hire. I don't want to make sure that I'm not attributing it to the wrong person. I believe it was him. And I do believe that I was very fortunate, right? I was coming up at a time where the industry was so nascent. Your bosses are like maybe a year older than you, and they don't know what they're doing either, generally, because this whole industry was super new. And whatever model that we had from our older bosses who were more experienced executives were premised on models that were, out of publishing or something else or another industry. And so they were also trying to learn things as they were going. So it was a and I would still say it's today that technology is a very great industry from that respect. And there's a lot of companies out there, not just in technology, where people are really filled with wonder and they're looking for growth and they're looking for new opportunities and they're willing to give young people the opportunity to take that stretch. And so I just happened to be very lucky to have come up at a time when the internet was so nascent. And so if you wanted to do something, your boss said something like, well, okay, well, we don't never seen somebody do it. So give it a whirl. And so, at CNET, I was like, well, everybody keeps stealing our specially done like game levels and they keep stealing it. So is it okay if I talk to these like game developers and maybe embed our logo onto like this boxing game? They're like, sure, why not? I'm like, at worst, they steal our stuff and then they're just doing marketing for me. And they're like, but that seems like a good idea. So yeah, if you could talk the game developers into doing it, why not? I'm like, okay. And so, and they're like, the engineers are like, okay. And so we did it, and it turned out to be, no, lo and behold, the competitors stole our special little game download game level, and then they did my marketing for me, right? So, but
See,
my
that's
bosses were like, do whatever you think is right, and we'll give it a whirl. So,
well, it's this way. I play golf, right? And my thing is I notice the better player you are, the luckier you tend to get. Right? I mean, if I hit my ball and it's going right, it's going out of bounds. If a guy who plays really well hits a ball and it's kind of going around, it's amazing how it finds a tree and knocks it back in the fairway.
look, I think that certainly, some of it is luck. I mean, we have to say that, opportunities have to present
Oh, I
themselves.
agree. I agree because the universe is that way where it's just so ethereal
Exactly.
and ephemeral, if you will. Yeah, I 100% agree with
But
that. But it's
yeah,
being prepared for the luck.
absolutely. And I am a tipping point Malcolm Gladwell person. And
10,000 hours.
exact 10,000 hours, right? Takes 10,000 hours to be a really, really decent violinist, right? And so I actually practice some of this in a oddly different way related to this sort of Gladwell-esque kind of thing. But I do believe like putting in practice and working at something, there's no overnight successes in many ways. Like you're putting in your time, you're learning and you know, and you're applying. Right. It may not be always directly the same thing, but whatever you're learning in business, it's you're putting in the hours and times to basically be proficient at being in business. Right. So it does make a difference. But working skills, right, and practicing is important. And then being at the right place at the right time also makes a difference.
At Reed Animal Hospital, they treat your pet as if it was their own. Now, I'm a very satisfied customer. I can tell you they mean that. It's not a chain. It truly is about helping you and your pet enjoy life together. Dr. David Reed and his entire staff take the time to get to know you and your pet. I can tell you what I like. He's helped me better understand what my dog Luna needs and how I can take care of her more efficiently and kindly. Find them online at reedanimalhospital.com. 2 locations, Saratoga and Campbell. Little secret from me to you, Dr. Reed actually gives you his cell number so he can answer your questions and concerns. They really are committed to you and your pet. reedanimalhospital.com.
I'm with Mike and Brenda Council with another real Mike Council plumbing and rooter story. Let's talk about the early days. What was it like?
Well, when we first started, the phone was by the bed.
So just the two of you.
Exactly.
And I would answer the emergency
She'd
calls
answer
in the middle of the night. I'd wake up and answer them.
2:00, I'm headed out the door.
So 30 years ago.
30 years and 6 months.
But I hear Mike Council Plumbing might have had its beginnings when you were, what, a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in a little one-room shack, and we had an outhouse out back.
An outhouse?
That's correct.
Oh, my.
And ended up with a great appreciation for indoor plumbing.
I guess. And when you finally got it?
It was a great day.
Since 1993, the people of San Jose and the South Bay have trusted Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter for all their plumbing needs. From emergencies like a drain backup or water leak, maybe you need a new water heater or fixture installed, a gas appliance hooked up. Give Mike Council a call at 408-217-1002 or go to mcplumbing.com, an official partner of the San Jose Sharks.
You're in clean hands with Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter.
Okay, can I nerd out with you just a little bit? Because I just want to nerd out with you, right? Because you went to Audible, and as you're saying, they still some of your stuff on the Audible app. I throw my money at Audible. I throw my money
Thank you.
because I love it. And what I do is I love listening to audiobooks. I love it when I run because when I listen to music, it becomes a measurement of time. And you're just going, if I only do 7, 12 more songs. But if somebody's telling me a story, I'm telling you, it changes the game. If you're a runner and you haven't started listening to audio. So I wanted to go, because you said I remember books on tape. That's what we used to call them, right? And CDs were the worst ideas ever because they would always skip.
Yep.
I will tell you a little this. I had an idea back in 1987. I went to a bank and asked, I said, I would love to do a thing where I read like newspapers and magazines and put them out locally and see if people would rent them or buy them. And they were like, it's just not a feasible idea. So this is back in Colorado back in 19. So I had the idea. I just didn't know how to do it. And the technology wasn't there to distribute it the way it is.
Yeah.
But let's get back into you said you love audiobooks.
I love.
Tell me about the audiobooks. I want to know your favorite stories. Okay. Self-help books are great. I want fiction. I want fiction. I want great autobiographies. I want to know what's on your list. If I were to look on your phone, what would I find in your library? Because I think I have 510 books on my phone right now.
Yeah. So, well, it depends on if we're looking at my ebooks collection versus Audible. So, you know, it was the geek fantasy come true, right? If you're somebody who loves audiobooks, and by the way, again, things come full circle. I actually read for the blind when I was a high school volunteer. And so they would make kids, read things like college text, right? So because like text to speech is really not very, popular back when I was coming up. So you really read a lot of textbooks when, as part of that reading for the blind sort of program. And so, what a wonderful experience then to basically land in a place run by an amazing sort of CEO like Don Katz. And so it was kind of like being a kid in a candy store. So I could buy whatever books I want because it was free. And so I bought and I listened and listened. And so I'm a huge fan. People always say like it's kind of super weird, but I love audiobooks that are like multiple hours long, right? Audible had, you just kind of pick up where you last left off. I love myself, historic fiction, right? So I'm all about the winds of war and remembrance and like, the longer the hours and the better the reader, the more I get into it. I love historic fiction. Herman Wouk is a favorite. I am a big fan of, picking things like random things up. And so off the top of my head, I cannot remember what I have. I think I have something called a Wife app right now that I'm listening to, and I'm listening to a ton of podcasts. Dr. Huberman and a whole bunch of things. And so, audio, like listening to people talk about really interesting topics or fiction, nothing gets better than that. And we used to talk about this at Audible. We talk about earballs. And our earballs are competing against eyeballs and, just general attention from people. And so we would achieve greatness if people are actually sitting in their driveway and they're listening to audiobook and they don't get out of the car because they just sit there in their driveway to continue to listen. And that was a big one. And so for us, like that's amazing, right? Because people love then what we're doing and what we do. And so, yeah.
That's how I increase mileage. I'd go an extra mile so I could hear more of the book. I really would.
Yeah.
And that's how I just increase my mileage because I'm like, okay, this is going. And yeah, I love narrators.
He's a great audiobook reader. He's phenomenal. So
him and Ray Porter. So if you know Ray, Chia-Lin, can you send him a text?
I will confess that I never get to work on the cool part of the Audible piece where, you get to work with the great readers and the authors. Sadly, I get to do the distribution portion of the relationships. And so always exciting to work with our distribution partners, but nothing as sexy as working with the authors and the readers. They're very,
because you figure out how to pay for it. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. That's what I was saying about going back to the college and going back to these young workers and going, hey, if you can find a way to make yourself valuable, a company will take care of you. A company will treat you as a valuable asset because they, I remember laughing. We were at dinner one night with my friends and my wife, like, he works 4 hours a day. He gets off here at 9 o'clock and he's gone. And I'm like, well, the key is I make somebody a pretty good amount of money in 4 hours. They don't say, gosh, Gary's just such a great guy. They go, hey, are you coming back tomorrow? Yeah, cool. And if you could, and I when I've talked to colleges and things like that, it's like I try to sit back and say, you have to find a way to make yourself valuable. I love Ray Porter and Scott Brick, but unless they're making money, we're just we're throwing balloons in the wind. I mean, what are we really doing?
people follow them. They sometimes only get books read by those particular readers. And, I think that they make a huge difference. And so we always explore because, cost savings is always important at every company. I
Uh,
remember we actually went through a process where, like, what are some things that you can read, you know, automated, right? And that experience just wasn't a positive one. And so really having the right reader makes a huge difference. We used to have people write in reviews and they love the story. They actually love reading the book and they want to enjoy it via Audible, but they just didn't find that the particular reader to be compatible. So this this storytelling experience and how people understand the world, interpret the world, um, experience the world through somebody else's eyes, somebody else's interpretation, somebody else's tone is really important, right? This is why we have newscasters. That's why we have journalists. This is why we have, folks like Scott, right? They are amazing people that we sort of are able to view things from, and it's a great experience. So it's not going to be again as easy as, reading, having computers read for you. So
See, that takes us to our next level because it was what I think humanity offers to humanity is randomness. AI computers, it's linear, it's math, it's 2 plus 2 will always equal 4. And when it's like working in the world of radio. You can upload your own playlist. You can listen to anything. What we give you is, oh, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect him to say that. I didn't expect that topic. And we love that, right? We all fear ruts. Now, we all take great comfort in ruts, but we fear them also. And you're in this world of AI that you were always intrigued by, and you've always been right there on the cutting edge of it. And there you are at Logic Mark. But I wanted to, before I get started on that, okay, listen, on paper, you should have never taken that job, right? I mean, that's you going,
no,
all right, this is me. This is me just going, I'm gonna play this hunch. I've got enough business experience. I've got enough experience. I know I can make this work. But on paper, that was a bold choice, as we like to say, huh?
yeah. So I'm gonna say a great shout out. The recruiter that came to me, he's one of the best recruiters I've ever worked with. He's what a great guy. But I always jokingly say, like, you know, the call was almost something like, "Hey, so the company has 2 lawsuits. It's about to be delisted by the Nasdaq. It has not enough money, and they're probably going to get shut down and get delisted. And you know, and the founding CEO of the company was indicted by the SEC. So are you in?" And you're sort of looking at this and you're thinking, "Gosh, thank you so much for thinking about me for this glass cliff."
How much do you hate me?
And he is I mean, I will say that executive recruiters are an amazing breed of people. They are looking for folks to help. Their job is always to help a company be more successful. So bless their hearts for all the things that they do. And they're looking for people who may not always seem like the perfect fit for the company that, they're trying to do. And it's the good ones that are saying, like, you don't seem like the norm of where this company needs to be, but you may be the right thing for this company. And it takes an extremely good recruiter to be able to say, like, on paper, not 100% fit, but the tenacity, the capabilities, the what this company may need is maybe something different than what they think they need on paper. And that's what makes really good recruiters. And so, but I have to admit, I laughed a little bit, hung up the phone and I thought, boy, that's a doozy of a company. And then I thought about, and I sat down, but I could not get it out of my mind. At the time, I was in discussions. I was about to sort of leave my AI company and wanted to do something different. It's very difficult to raise money as a startup. And so I was like, I need to take a little break. And I didn't think I wanted to be a CEO again because raising money, doing all these things, you basically as a CEO don't get to do the things that you love to do. Typically, especially if you're in technology and what you love to do is build technology and grow companies, right? Your focus is typically almost never on, you know, building product or, you know, doing all the cool things, to program the growth and those opportunities. You basically hire other people to do all the fun things that you want to do, right?
Mhm.
And so, I thought, oh boy, I would love to go back and be a CMO and then I get to, manage growth and subscriptions and all that kind of stuff. I need to take a break from fundraising and the corporate stuff. It's horrid. But then it really kind of got into my head. And it got into my head because I'm one of, you know, half of Gen Xers and the 1 in 3 millennials who's a sandwich generation person. And so I'm one of those people who had elderly loved ones I care for that I worry about that they have falls and they're living by themselves independently. And I have, a child. And so the things that plague you and the things that you sort of are experiencing, you're thinking, boy, like if only somebody built X. And for myself, and for a lot of people who interact with Logic Mark, it's personal. And it's personal because my mother-in-law, we went to have ramen in Oakland. She sat down too quickly. She was wearing a competitor device. At the time, not a competitor, but we, put it on her. It was, that was what's available. And she was
Mhm.
living in a 2-acre home by herself after my father-in-law had passed. And we thought, please wear this so we know you're safe. And she sat down too quickly and it basically screams out, Mrs. Becker, are you okay? And of course, everybody is like dead silence, turns and looks at her and she's embarrassed. And I feel bad for her. And I remember thinking at the time, somebody needs to do better. There's got to be a way to make these things work better. Like the sensors just isn't very good, And that's when that came rushing back. And I thought, can I do better? And if I don't do better, who is going to come in and do this here? And what do I think I could contribute? And I go by this sort of, I call it the 3-legged stool of success for technology companies. You can control, you need 3 legs for something fundamental for good growth and business to be built on. So you need 3 legs at least, right? So you have to have the right people, you have to have the right product. And then this third leg is always like, you call it luck, Slack founder luck. That's one component of it. Demographics, timing, all this. That third leg, almost never do you control, right? And so
Mhm.
you have to fundamentally find yourself in a situation where that third leg seems really particularly strong and that can support the growth of the business if you add these two other components that you have more control over. And that was the third leg that seemed very, very good for Logic Bar. One, 10,000 people turning 65 every day, right?
Every day.
Every day. So by the time by 2040, 1 in 4 of us will be 65 and over, right? That's crazy. That's the biggest demographic shift in decades, right? So you add that, and I call it the perfect storm. Then you add that, and you're like, okay, well, I'm a sandwich generation person. I'm busy, and like my mother-in-law lives far away. And so who's going to take care of her? So you think maybe professional help if she wants to age at home. Well, guess what? Just so happens that, there's less people wanting to do in-home care because it's a not high paying, profession. And then by the time that's 2019, we were going to have a shortage of 350,000 people, but then COVID hits. And everyone who is in the healthcare industry who takes care of people are just burned out. So I think that number is even worse. So when you add that sort of increase of people who need help with the decrease in people who can,
Mhm.
be professional help, then you've got the makings of a situation where technology could come in and potentially help make the situation less acute. And that's sort of where, wow, this seemed like a really good opportunity for the technology to be better, assuming that you can take assuming the industry was open to it, or that you're basically going in there the way we are, which is say, you know what, the industry has a lot of different players, but none of whom are actually building the technology. They're buying technology randomly and assembling it together versus actually building new technology and building new IP. So is there a space for a company that is a true tech company who wants to build an IP, build a technology? And we felt like there were. And so this was a good fundamental opportunity to do it. So,
And do you need to wrap up?
nope.
Okay, cool. Because I'm getting fascinated by it. I know I only got a few minutes left with you, but I wanted to make sure. Well, it's just we talk about, one of those universe God moments or whatever you want to go with, that here you are, you had this experience with your mother-in-law, and then this company comes along, and there's been no new technology that has been increased or created. We're still in the help I've fallen and I can't get up stage, right? That came out, my gosh, in the 90s. I mean, we've all remembered the commercials, if those of us for a certain age.
Yes.
And we remember that. And did that all just kind of coalesce quickly, or was it something that just kept going? Hey, this company, I could make a difference with this. Or was it light bulb?
It definitely is not always a light bulb. I like to sort of think that everybody should be doing this, is that when you take a new job, you're looking at it the way that an investor would look at an opportunity, because you're investing your time. You're certainly investing, you know, real capital, and real capital for an individual is your time, your passion, your interests, and all of those things. So you should be as rigorous about why you want to take a job versus not. And so it's not an easy decision, right? Because there's always more other opportunities you could take, and there's an opportunity cost you're going to have around that. And so it was not necessarily an easy decision. I mean, certainly the company is and was, was in a fairly dire strait, right? They hadn't built new products since 2015. The IP, most of them were, sort of sold off to other companies like Garmin. There was definitely things that were, incredibly wrong with it, and there was definitely a lot of things to fix. The question was this too far gone? And it was a little bit too difficult, and you're never going to find that out in many, many ways. For a lot of executives, when you take on a new role, you won't know until you get inside how much of a fix it's going to be. And I do think that fundamentally, you have to be the type of person who, um, good or bad, takes a incredible rush. You have to have a certain type of personality to enjoy startups and enjoy um, things that should probably make you feel more scared on the business side, because pivots and turnarounds are very difficult sort of situations. Rapid growth startup companies, when you go from pre-seed, when you're conceptualizing idea going into growth mode, those are very fundamentally difficult things to do. So you have to be slightly a masochist who love that kind of rush to do that type of work. And I happen to be having that type of personality, so and enjoy puzzling out how to fix things and how to optimize things. And so if you have that personality where you like to fix and puzzle and, make things like really pop, that's a great personality to go into startups. If you have a little bit of that sort of, I can't put something down until I figure out how to fix it, that's a really great personality to sort of go into a startup. And the fundamental sort of like strong stomach of knowing that things will look really, really bad. Um, and you're kind of there digging and hoping you got all of the icky stuff out and fixed everything you can. And sometimes you find like a random sort of like, bad patch, and being able to stomach it and sort of say, like, be a practical person to sort of fix it and move on. That's the kind of personality you need to have. And it just so happens I am that personality and enjoy doing it. But it was not an easy decision. And it's taken us quite a long time when you go from nothing, where you're just a hardware company with very good margins at 60, which we now moved to 68%. But that's all you had. And you haven't built anything since 2015, and the world had moved on, not by much, but still moved on a little bit. And then you've got to build from scratch, right? Everything that the IoT connected world is. And so our company basically built something where if we're a Series A, Series B company, we built 3 products. We built a cloud AI-enabled, ML-enabled cloud-based system. We build apps for the mobile phone for both, you know, iOS and Android, a standalone iOS Android product, and, an entire UX system. I call it like building basically an Android system from the ground up, right? And so we spent a lot of time the last 2 years literally just building what in a Series A company, they would build one part of it or one and a half part of it. We build 3 things all at the same time. And then in 3 years, probably better than a typical Series A, you know, or Series B, and that's really the size from a revenue perspective of where our company is, except we just happen to be public because you kind of take what you get, right? We're a public
Yeah.
company, so we were maintaining ourselves as a public company. And so we filed 12 patents in 3 years, and 7 of which have now been published. And so it's, on its way to being secured. And
Wow.
that's very fast for a Series A or Series
That's
B.
crazy fast.
So,
I've been in Silicon Valley enough to know
yeah.
this is starting a college, not just even a team, starting a college and in 1 year having your football team become a national championship. I mean, that's it's because there's no there, right? So you're creating there to get there in that scenario.
Yeah,
That's
the way I look at it, and I
bonkers.
love that football analogy because I always kind of laugh and I always say, like, well, we had like probably the worst team in the NFL. And then at some point, they were going to kick us off the NFL and we were going to go into that other league that nobody wants to talk about. That's people play football there, but it's not the NFL. People want you to be going to the Super Bowl or at least be a contender. And then you're coming in like mid-season, having had the worst, like or no team, you're playing short players, you had the wrong people, and now you're the new quarterback. And because you're a small company, you're the new quarterback and the team like coach. And then you're going to try to bring in all new team members, and then you're still expected to win the game. But everybody expects you to win the Super Bowl in year 1. And so you're year 3 from building an entirely new team with an entirely new quarterback, coach, and everybody. And you're building the team back from the ground up. And they're like, you should win the Super Bowl by now. Why haven't you? Right. And I'm like, well, so, we're at the cusp. Like, we've won some of our games now. And like, this team looks good. They've won some of the games, but we're not quite there yet. And we're not making it to the playoffs here. But next year feels really good because the team's really gelling together. And we feel like we got the right formula. We switched a few players. We thought they were the right ones. We switched them out, and we've got the right sort of like coaching mechanism. We've got the right sort of routine. We've got our plays down. And so this is our year. But then they're like, yeah, like, so we're not going to pay for the salary of your players. And so
You
Denver comes
see?
going out, right? And saying like, you really should, because you've been loving this team. You should still love the team. You should still want to invest in the team. You should still want to love the team because the team is, fundamentally different than what it was 3 years ago when you loved it and it had nothing. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and you gotta find the players. You gotta find the players that everybody else hasn't found.
yes.
And you gotta find the players that not only are very talented, but they have that attitude that you said. Hey, I don't need stability. I let's take that risk because that's where the greatest opportunity is, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
if you're gonna flip a house, let's get the really cruddy house and buy it for 30,000 and put a lot of time into it and then sell it for 2 million. That's where the opportunity is. You buy a 500,000, I've got $2 million home. There's not much you can get there, right? Because there's only so much you can go. So it's a fascinating analogy in what you've done and where you've been and how you've approached it is it's just like I said, you're weird in the best possible way, right? I mean, the fact that you have this background and you have this, let's do it and we can do it. And I see the need here and you may not see my vision, but I do it. And I need you to climb on my back and we're going to walk into that river. That's what we're doing. We're going to cross this river and you just need to trust me. There'll be times we can't touch the bottom, but it's okay. It's okay. We're still getting there.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. Thank you for that. That's actually the best compliment I could get. Being weird in the best possible way, right? And I always tell people shareholders and boards do not hire me to basically, in the words of like Gretzky, right, and ice hockey, I shouldn't be skating to where the puck is. I have to skate to where the puck is going to be. And so you may not see it now, but I see where the puck is going to be, and that's where I need to drive towards, not where it is today, right? And that's short-term thinking, and that shouldn't be the reason why people like want to hire me. It's because I need to get them there.
I've got so many questions about AI, and really, you and I need to talk Terminator.
I
Just the
absolutely would
movies.
love to. I love Terminator 1 and only 1. So
I know. And we can talk about where it all went wrong, and we can talk about the creativity aspect and what we would do if we were going to make a Terminator,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Because I got ideas. I got ideas that we can figure out and we can spin and all the other stuff. And knowing that you're a book nerd and a bit of a science fiction nerd, come on, really? A chat room in Klingon?
I wasn't good at Klingon, but I had a dictionary. So there you go.
The fact that you have a Klingon dictionary.
They had one available for me to look at. I was a novice chat room monitoring person. So there you go. But, that's the whole thing about taking jobs that feels a little uncomfortable. And that's why you stretch and grow, right? There you go.
I would not even know where to find a Klingon dictionary. I respect the fact. I hope you still own it. Please tell me you didn't throw it away.
That was part of the assets of the company. So when I left the company, that was it. So
Your next birthday, I'm finding you a Klingon dictionary.
I look forward to it. That the Game of Thrones, Valerian dictionary would be helpful too.
Do you know Simmons is part of my family's last name? I mean, that's part of I've got a part of my family tree is Simmons, so we can be related.
That's possible. So I'm adopted by my stepdad, and that's my last name, Simmons. I'm married to a Becker, and so they are, I believe, from Milwaukee and from the South. And so my stepdad is African American. And so, and I believe the aggregate of the family is from, I want to say Mississippi. And then he's part of the family that had moved to, I believe, the Milwaukee area. So,
Wow. Well, we got the South. There's bound to be some of my family in Mississippi. Bound to be. And we've got every color of the rainbow in my family.
yeah.
So it's absolutely. Here's all I got to say. Does he like peanut butter?
He does, but my biggest memory of my stepdad and basically my dad is that he is a big fan of the bologna sandwich. And so white bread, Wonder only, and the bologna. So Oscar Myers only. So
there's a chance our DNA is intertwined. I'm just throwing that on there.
I am not going to share whether or not I love having bologna sandwich on Wonder Bread. So
mayonnaise and a tomato, that's everything you need. I'm talking about bologna, mayonnaise, and a tomato on white bread. My friend
would cringe if he hears me talking about how I really do so our company is based in Louisville, and there is a wonderful barbecue place called Mama's in Louisville. A shout out to them. They have just amazing food. And one of that really amazing food is a grilled bologna slider. And that thing is ambrosia. So I'm just sort of sharing this with anybody who's in Louisville or is traveling to Louisville, that they should stop by Mama's for a really amazing grilled bologna slider.
For the first time in my life, I have a reason to even want to go to Kentucky.
Not in the Derby is what I understand. So.
Oh, I don't do I do a lot of hats. I don't like mint.
Yeah.
So a mint julep, any recipe that starts with mint, I'm out. And I'm the cook of the family, so we don't have any mint. We don't do any of that. All right. So the next time we do this, we've got things to talk about.
Absolutely.
And we could talk about mint, and we could talk about cooking, and we could talk about a lot about AI.
I would love
a lot about it, because that's what you're doing and what it's doing. And I want to talk about the predictive features that are in there. That's fascinating.
AI, I mean, everybody talks about AI and they talk about GPT, and, we're all looking at these weird pictures that people generate where the person has 7 fingers on one hand. all sort of interesting things, or college students cheating on their essays, whatever. What I'm more interested in is always around things like AI and its applicability into, segments, especially in the area of healthcare, and how that can actually exponentially help us learn more and help make people safer and healthier. So that's really
Preventative.
more interesting to me than ChatGPT and college students and high school students cheating on essays and pictures with like random weird, you know, seven finger people.
Well, we're going to go deep on that. I will get with your people. I don't have any, but I will get with your people and get our next episode on, because I really want to go deep on that. Chia-Lin, I've just had the best time. Thank
Same
you.
here. Thank you so much, Gary. I had a great time as well. Look forward to your next call.